Hello YouTube. Baikonur or Baikonur translates from the Kazakh language of Kazakhstan, means rich valley. This is the name of the area in which the Russian cosmodrome or spaceport itself is located. The ancient nomads who lived in those desert places had an interesting legend about a black shepherd who built a huge sling out of skins, filled it with red-hot stones and camel fat, and threw those stones at enemies who were approaching his camp. Falling those hot rocks or stones and fat hit the enemies, while those who survived, they fled in terror. Nothing grew in these places, where the stones fell for a long time, and scorch marks remained on the ground itself. The nomads considered this valley to be the navel of the earth. According to experts, this legend is more than 10 centuries old. Now, completely different burning stones, satellites, and rockets are flying out of the giant sling of the cosmodrome. This is how the ancient legend found its reflection in the mirror of modernity. Baikonur as a stadium. That's exactly what the Soviet cover story said. The construction was carried out in the strictest secrecy. No one was supposed to know what was being built and for what. The goods, the material arrived in ordinary railroad cars, which were unloaded under the cover of night. The builders were convinced that they were building a stadium. And much later, after the construction was completed, they were perplexed. And if they were building a stadium, so why did they need special awards and medals from the Soviet state? There is no need to talk about the difficult conditions they went through: climate and sandstorms, dry winds, frosts, and so forth. It wasn't a piece of cake. It was very difficult. At first, the builders lived in dugouts. Then the barracks were gradually improved. Also, next to the future cosmodrome, another false cosmodrome was being built, as well as a whole dummy town with schools, residential buildings, and other facilities. Secrecy above all, and the need to deceive the enemy and conceal the construction from the adversary. While father of the Soviet space exploration and former political prisoner of the Stalin's concentration camps, Sergei Korolev, considered it to be a fortunate place. During the excavation of the pit for the future Gagarin launch, Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, an ancient bonfire was discovered at a depth of 35 meters. Archaeologists have established the age of the find 10 to 35,000 years before Common Era. Look at my videos about archaeological discoveries in Kazakhstan. It will give you some backup. Korolev was very pleased with this news. He considered it to be a fortunate sign. We're building on the frontier of life. If there was life here before us, then this place will be fortunate for us too. That's what the chief space vehicle designer of the Soviet Union said. Korolev took a piece of coal from the ancient bonfire as a keepsake and carried it in a matchbox. Well, on June 25th, 1966, the town of Leninsk, 45 kilometers from Baikonur, turned into the star city Zvezdograd for one day, again, for the reasons of the strictest secrecy. Loans were hastily put in order, the payments were covered with new asphalt. It was clear that something important was planned in the city. This is how the Operation Palma 1 or Palm 1 began, a grandiose performance, demonstration of the missile power of the USSR. The spectator was the French president himself, General de Gaulle. The operation involved the commander of the strategic missile forces and all missile units of the Baikonur division, as well as Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Kosygin, and other Soviet leaders. The demonstration went flawlessly. The goal was impressed. The successful launch of the man into space has generated serious interest in Soviet rockets and missiles in the West. So it was decided to conduct a series of so-called tours to the cosmodrome for Western leaders in order to protect themselves from unauthorized information leaks. The exact number of these operations, codenamed Palma, is still unknown, but it is known for sure that there were several of them. By the way, October 24 is the day of silence in Baikonur. This is the memory of a long-hidden and therefore little-known tragedy. In October of 1960, a disaster occurred during the test of a new intercontinental ballistic missile. During electrical tests on a refueled rocket, a sudden start of the second stage engines occurred. A fire began, because of which, as well as fuel vapor poisoning, 76 Soviet military personnel and civilian experts died. Among the dead was the commander-in-chief of the strategic missile forces, Marshal of Artillery Nedelin. According to eyewitnesses, the marshal, who was sitting not far from the rocket on a wooden stool, left only a shadow on the ground and a melted button of his uniform, by which he was identified. The death of the commander-in-chief and the disaster were concealed from the Soviet population. Relatives were informed about the death of their loved ones only 1 week later. For the most meticulous, a story was invented about the ignition of barrels of gasoline. The intercontinental ballistic missile, the first artificial satellite of the Earth, the legendary Sputnik 1, the first spacecraft to fly to the moon Luna 1, the first man orbiter with Yuri Gagarin on board, the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. All of them were launched from the Baikonur cosmodrome, and you can find videos on the subject, which include some of the UFO and paranormal angles to it. You can find it in my channel. Look under Space Exploration playlist. Mysteries. There are enough of them all over the world, including in Kazakhstan, as you can pick up from my videos too about this very interesting, fascinating country. Among its mysterious places is the world-famous Baikonur cosmodrome. Its territory and surroundings have long been reputed to be the area in which unidentified flying objects, UFOs, have been repeatedly spotted in the sky above and even on the ground. According to the published memoirs of Valery Denisov, a Voronezh resident who served as an officer at the cosmodrome, on a hot summer day in 1971, he returned to the headquarters of his military unit after lunch with a group of colleagues. One of them noticed a UFO in the sky shaped like a saucer. It hovered at a high altitude above one of the launch pads, then it flew to Denisov's group, towards his group. The UFO stopped above the group for a minute and then flew towards the cosmodrome headquarters. One of the officers ran to the phone and called the chief of staff of Baikonur. The reply was that he already knew about the object from the anti-aircraft gunners, who requested the order to open fire on the UFO. But the chief said, "I did not allow it." One night, a flying saucer with a diameter about 30 meters landed at the Baikonur space launch in full view of the sentry. Naturally, he was scared and called the head of the guard. He and the away guard shift, fearing the approach of the saucer, shouted and waved their hands in front of it for a long time. Whether from this or not, the flying saucer, rose silently, flew 500 meters at low altitude, and landed again. Through the telephone communication chain, information quickly reached the headquarters of the missile forces of the USSR Armed Forces. On the same night, the deputy commander of the troops arrived at the cosmodrome. After the eyewitness report, he ordered the non-disclosure of what he saw and transferred the head of the guard to another unit thousands of kilometers from Baikonur. Well, at the cosmodrome and in the city of Leninsk, now Baikonur, with the appearance of UFOs, outdoor lighting, lights, and television screens in the premises suddenly went out. The radio went silent, also unexpectedly resuming broadcasting later. UFOs were seen at the cosmodrome immediately before and immediately after the emergency. But officially, everyone who tried to find out something about these UFOs received the military's laconic answer. As a result of long-term observations of the air situation in the area of the Baikonur cosmodrome, reliable data on the appearance of unidentified flying objects have not been registered. Interesting. Just like in the United States, isn't it? Well, several times a year, various flying saucers objects appear above the cosmodrome. Apparently, launches attract the attention of aliens, but all data has always been strictly recorded and, of course, hidden by the government. In the 1970s, UFOs began to be noticed over the cosmodrome. At that time, a regiment armed with R-36 missiles, a partial orbital bombardment system, was stationed at Baikonur. It consisted of 3 combat launch complexes with 6 mines each. The missiles were launched once or twice a year to maintain combat readiness. Since the design was unsuccessful, the first launch was made on August 8, 1971. So let me read you this account, and I think it's very similar to what we already heard, but this came from other sources. So in the summer of the same year, the officers returning from the canteen noticed a UFO hovering over the launch pad. The anti-aircraft gunners requested the command to destroy, but the chief of staff forbid them to do so. The saucer, turning 80 degrees, flew away rapidly. So that's some more information. Another time at night, a saucer with a diameter of about 30 meters landed near the sentry. The soldier called the head of the guard. Together they began to shout and make noises towards the UFO, which did not give results. Then the boss fired into the air. The saucer rose up, ascended, and flew 500 meters at low altitude. Then landed again. The head of the guard unit reported the incident. The same night, the deputy commander-in-chief of the missile forces urgently arrived. As a result, the commanding officer was removed from his post, and the personnel signed a non-disclosure agreement. So you had 2 cases from 2 different sources. Almost identical information. In the future, spaceships would become frequent visitors to the cosmodrome, so after 1970s. The military recorded the arrival of UFOs of various shapes. There were also saucer-shaped ones, elongated like an airship, in the shape of cigars and spheres. Most often made of light metal. Sometimes they would shine brightly. Generally, their number increased. They arrived in pairs, in small groups. The military often noticed that the points of light in the sky could merge together or conversely break up into several small luminous objects. They arrived silently and disappeared like lightning. They could not be traced. At the cosmodrome, it began to be rumored that UFOs appear before unsuccessful launches of Soviet rockets. So we hear it again. So rocket scientist Guryanov recalled the appearance of UFOs on October 4, 1990. That day, before the launch of the Zenit rocket, we heard a wild dog howling in the steppe. We also wondered with the guys where so many dogs came from. Then this saucer appeared. We went down to the command post and got to work. Then everything did not go according to the plan. The rocket crashed back into the mine during the launch, and a terrifying explosion occurred, which demolished 2 underground floors. People were miraculously unharmed. Spacecraft often deprived launch pads of electricity during landing. Officially, the military responded to requests about the appearance of UFOs over Baikonur in this way. There is no reliable data on unidentified flying objects. It's very interesting. There was once a publication, Komsomolskaya Pravda of Altai, that showed a picture of a UFO. Its owner claimed that it was an original from the secret archives of a military base where his father served. The photo showed a saucer-shaped object hovering over a construction site. According to the owner, it was made during the construction of Baikonur in 1955. Ufologists reported the need for the examination to confirm the significance of the photo. Then, June of 2010, sometimes there are controversial facts of UFO sightings. So in June of 2010, amateur ufologist Gleb Ravrinenko managed to shoot a film of an unidentified object in the sky over Almaty, which left behind a glowing plume. However, astrophysicists rejected Gleb's assumptions, assuring that in this case the guy filmed the launch of the Soyuz launch vehicle. Dozens of such launches in the skies of Kazakhstan take place annually. They are just rarely recorded. But at the same time, scientists do not deny the existence of UFOs. Look, on the internet, on the World Wide Web, you can find forums where former military personnel who served in the Baikonur communicate amongst themselves. Among them, there are many witnesses of unusual objects visiting the cosmodrome. They describe everything in different ways. Some say that they saw a long silver UFO that hovered over Baikonur for 20 minutes. The others said that an object with a tail from which sparks were falling. There were also such details. There in the black sky, there was a bright dot which gradually expanding became a ring. And this ring grew and grew in diameter, while the donut itself was describing the spaceship or UFO itself became thinner and lost its brightness. As a result, the ring expanded and reached the horizon. But look, there are also those who deny that there were any UFOs at the cosmodrome, and all that the others saw were just rocket launches. Well, secrecy is the rule. We cannot know for certain, but I feel it my job, so to say, maybe obligation, duty, mission, is to bring this news to you. And a very interesting paranormal phenomena from Eurasia, from China, from Russia, Ukraine, other countries in the area. And if you like my research, I ask that you please kindly support me. You'll find links on how to do it in the description to this video. Please go through my channel. You will find much more about the Soviet exploration, about UFOs, about the effects on human psyche, and so forth. And thank you for your attention to my work.